Osimo himself, bringing you a odd 12-game slate on this Monday, June 17th, 2019. Boys, how are we today?
I'm good. I'm excited to get to play DFS again. It's been like 3 or 4 whole days since I've played.
That's tough. I got a new office chair yesterday, and I got, those glass chair mats they have? So maybe you don't, but they have glass chair mats, and it's like, that sounds really cool. So number one of the scariest moments of my life is sitting down on it for the first time. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's very uncomfortable sliding all over the place. Do you have a chair mat, Adam?
No, I'm going to get one, and I don't think it's going to be glass, but I don't have one right now. I'm just scratching the hell out of my wood floor.
Right. So I have scuffs all over the back of my wall because my chair is uncontrollably rolling everywhere. And I'm just trying to find a balance here. So if you see me disappear from the screen, you know why. What's up with you, Alex?
Not much. Just got back from a little Father's Day trip, and I found that kind of came back, and the Angels are apparently the team, the best team in the league now. So looking forward to breaking this down with you guys.
For sure. And I think it might have something to do with Alex or Edwin Jackson being the worst pitcher in the league.
Is that what's going on? All right.
Yeah, it's possible. That was my hunch. All right, so we're only doing an hour because we talked about it prior to the show, and none of us thought that we'd need an hour 15 for these games because a lot of them we're gonna probably go over pretty quickly. We want to get as much comprehensive info out there as possible, but at the same time, we probably wouldn't need all of that based on some of these games. And by the way, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports is the sponsor of the Deeper Dive. Use the code AWESEMO when you sign up, AWESEMO, to get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points, which you can use on the site just like cash. So when you deposit, you can get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points. Enter any of the contests, assuming they're under $30. And they're 10 max entry, no 150 max. Pretty nice payouts from top to bottom, nothing crazy top heavy. And you don't have to go against guys that are throwing 150 lineups in every single day. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, use the code AWESEMO, get up to $30 to play on the site upon depositing. When you use the code AWESEMO, they are the sponsor of the Deeper Dive. Here we go, boys. Tampa Bay, New York Yankees, Yanni Chirinos, Masahiro Tanaka. Alex, I'll start with you. I do want to get your take on weather from around the league because the Northeast has got a lot of weather coming up here today. It looks like some of these games that were a little suspect earlier on could be all right. But what are your thoughts as far as the Yankees go, the Nationals, the Reds, a few of them up here in Northeast, or I guess you could call it Midwest, but not really, that are showing some potential problems?
Yes, I think right now we're getting to the point where you can start to look at the radar and really get a lot from that. With New York, what we're seeing is a lot of light green on the radar coming towards New York, but it looks like it's going to miss the Yankee Stadium, so it's not really going to have much of an impact at all. So I'm not going to be really focusing on weather there. And then let me find where Cincinnati is here. So Cincinnati, it looks like there isn't very high coverage in the area. It looks like most of the storms are passing north of Cincinnati, so I think that the game will be fine to play.
All right, sounds good. What are your thoughts on pitching here, Tanaka and Chirinos at Yankee Stadium?
So let me pull my numbers here. Both pitchers have a 21% K rate on the season, so not exactly what you're looking for as far as fantasy studs, but Tampa Bay has a team total of 4.6, so they're not projected to be amazing today. So I think you can go to Tanaka if he's a decent price on DraftKings where he's priced decently. On FanDuel, I don't really see it, and on Yahoo, probably not necessary.
Yeah, Adam, do you have any interest in pitching here? I mean, Tanaka, I've said so many times, he's one of the more enigmatic pitchers, but even this season, like, you're not seeing that very high ceiling from Tanaka that we've seen in seasons past where the ceiling justifies the floor.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff trending in the right direction for him. In previous seasons, he was always someone that had strikeout upside and normally was a league leader in swing percentage. That is the percentage of pitches that hitters chased out of the strike zone. Earlier this year, he was struggling in that regard, obviously not getting the strikeouts. His strikeout numbers are still down. But over his last 4 to 5 starts, we have seen the chase percentage creep up. We've seen an improved splitter, which is good. It's a scary matchup against a Tampa team that does have a lot of power and is getting the hit in Yankee Stadium now with the short porch in right. Also making it scary is that if you do look at pitch type data, Tanaka throws his slider more frequently than any other pitch to lefties and righties alike. Tampa actually has several hitters that have a lot of success against right-handed sliders. Austin Meadows, Yandy Diaz, Tommy Pham has some success. So, and then you get, Brandon Lau, obviously, with left-handed power. So I think it's a pretty scary spot for Tanaka. In my initial crunch on DraftKings, I got around, 10%, which I'd be fine with at his price tag. But I also was getting his Tampa bats.
Okay. Yeah. Who do you like here specifically on both sides or either side as far as hitters go? We know it's a great lefty-friendly park for power. Yankee Stadium, all in all, is a hitter-friendly venue. Not to mention, and I do think it's worth mentioning, it's been really humid the past few days. Let's see where. Okay, so it's going up to like 92% humidity, but it looks like it's not as bad, around 82% during game time here. Nationals 86% humidity. Any bats that really stand out to you here? Not just as scary hitters for the opposing pitcher, but guys you really like.
Yeah, Austin Meadows is the guy I got the most in those initial crunches. He came in around 12%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but because I was forcing 5-man stacks, I had 6% Tampa stacks in those initial crunches. So getting 12% of Meadows means that I was getting him as a one-off a lot. So he's the guy that really stood out from Tampa.
How about you, Alex?
I'm not really seeing a lot of great batting options in this game. And I think because it's the Yankees, probably won't be like super low on, so I don't really see myself picking anyone from this game. But one great value is Joey Wendell on FanDuel for 2,100, but probably not projected high enough to make my cash lineups.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to Washington and Philadelphia. Patrick Corbin, Jake Arrieta. I'll start with you here, Adam. Corbin's down to $8,200 on DraftKings. Listen, he's had 3 straight highly underwhelming starts. I'm not going to pretend that he hasn't. And his K rate's down. I mean, look, he's striking out, 26.4% of batters, where in context, I think it's the second highest K rate on this slate if you're not including Mike Clevenger. So, put in context on this slate, it is a good strikeout rate, but he just hasn't had the success from a strikeout standpoint against righties that you would have expected. He's at 23% this year. It's a weird spot because he has a world of upside. We know that. And it's also a Philadelphia team that has, been dealt a pretty bad hand as far as injuries go recently. They lost McCutchen for the season. Real Muto took a shot to the nuts and he's out again. So you've got Andrew Knapp in there. He's bad. Roman Quinn, as every time he's come up, he's shown flashes of quality stuff and then just struck out 100 times in a row. Sean Rodriguez is batting 5th. So I'm just trying to set the table for you here as far as Corbin goes, where, yes, he's had a low floor, but this is not the Phillies lineup that they rolled out there on day one either.
I think you mentioned a couple of really key points for how I'm approaching Corbin here. For one, you mentioned the context of the slate, which of course is huge, but can't really be overstated. Right. It's not like we're on a slate that has Chris Sale and Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom all going. You're on a slate where there's legitimate question marks about every single pitcher, whether it's just their price point or their matchup or their skill level or whatever. Corbin has not been as good this year as he was last year, and I think a lot of people expected that. Last year was an absolute aberration compared to every other season he's ever had.
We were expecting him to come back down to earth all season.
What'd you say?
We were expecting him to come back down to earth literally all season.
Right. And so this year, he's nowhere near as good as last year. It's still the second best season of his career. It's not like he's going out there and pitching terribly. His strikeout percentage, like you said, is the second highest on the slate this year. And the big thing is that his price tag has dropped. Instead of being priced like he would have been all of last year and basically being overpriced for the entire season, now he's in the middle of the pack. And it's not a great matchup if you look at Philadelphia's numbers for the season. But this lineup, and you mentioned it, is bad. You don't have McCutchen, you don't have Franco, you don't have Real Muto. You have
no Bruce either.
Yeah, no Bruce. I mean, you have Kingery hitting third. You have Rodriguez, Quinn, Hernandez, Knapp. Like, even if Corbin gives up a home run or 3 to Rhys Hoskins, he's probably making it up with the next 5 batters when he strikes them all out. So I can't get away from Corbin here. I know he hasn't been great in recent starts. He's not a Chris Sale type pitcher where he's going to just go get his every time out there. But the price tag here and the watered down Phillies lineup really just makes up for any of the risk.
He's the 11th most expensive pitcher on the slate that doesn't have a ton of good pitching. I'm with you 100%. I do like Scott Kingery, though. He has been smashing the ball, man. It's starting to seem like the Phillies knew what they were doing when they gave him that 5-year contract before his first game. I really like him today, too. What are your thoughts here, Alex, on pitching? And we can talk hitting as well. I don't imagine any of us are on Jake Arrieta, but Corbin, Phillies offense, and then we'll get to the Washington Nationals. I think we can spend quite a bit of time there. You might be muted.
Thanks, man. I have to agree with you guys that the line for the Phillies is pretty weak. I have them striking out about 15% more than your average lineup. And this is a spot where maybe I don't recommend sports bets a ton, but I've seen 6 and 6.5 floating around as strikeout props for Corbin. I think the over could be a pretty good bet because he's on the season had really good strikeout stuff with the 27% rate. Add in the fact that the Phillies lineup's so weak, and I think that he could rack up strikeouts even though he hasn't had any big strikeout games recently.
Okay, what about any Philly hitters you like here before we go to Washington?
Yeah, I think the Phillies are priced very well on DraftKings and Yahoo in particular. On FanDuel, there's a couple standout guys, but the top of the order on DraftKings, excluding Kingery, as you mentioned, Kingery has been crushing this year, 32% ISO. But I mean, I don't expect that to really continue. And he's the most expensive guy on the team. On a team with Bryce Harper and Rhys Hoskins, which is kind of crazy. But I guess I'm gonna have to analyze that a little bit more. But
yeah, I think if there's one thing that is nice about Kingery today, though, is this is a guy who normally was batting like 7th in the order, 6th once they were dealt some injuries. Now you've got him batting 3rd, which is nice. I mean, it's going from 7 to 3 is pretty significant. I know yesterday he hit 3rd. He was 6th on Saturday, though. My guess is until Realmuto returns, he'll probably be up top in the lineup. Alex, what about the Nats bats here against a pitcher in Arrieta who has really, really, really struggled when it's come to facing left-handed hitters, allowing a 380 WOBA, 238 ISO, almost 2.5 home runs per 9 with a 5.76 xFIP to lefties. It's been a dreadful season for Arrieta against opposite-handed hitters.
yeah, I think Arrieta isn't really that ace pitcher that he was for the Cubs a few years ago, for sure. He's just kind of a league average, a little bit less than average pitcher. I'm seeing pretty high ownership figures for the Nationals, so I think the public perception is that Arrieta's not that good, and for that reason, I'm not as keen on them as like a chalk play. Their team total is 5.6, which is pretty nice. But I think we can probably find some spots that are a little bit more contrary and get a little bit more differentiation from the field.
Adam, what do you make of this Nationals team whose total, by the way, has come up significantly throughout the day? I believe it opened at 4.8. We're at 5.6 now in Nationals Park.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Nats, but really it's the lefties for me. If you look at Arrieta this year, he's been perfectly fine against righties, striking out about 22%, really limiting, damage, 281 expected WOBA, 101 ISO. But against lefties, he's only struck out 14.5%. He's allowed a 420 expected WOBA. He's allowed a 238 ISO. And you have Juan Soto at a discounted price tag, 4,500, which might not get a ton of ownership on this slate because it's still $200 more than Mookie Betts, and he's not on the Angels, and I expect 3 outfielders there to carry a ton of ownership. So I really like that price tag. I really like Matt Adams at 4K on DraftKings batting 5th. I think those 2 guys really stand out. And then Trey Turner could be a contrarian option because I think that you're going to get a lot of people when they do pay up at shortstop going to Francisco Lindor, and Turner is a little bit more expensive. He is a right-handed bat, but it is a nice running matchup for him against Arrieta. So those 3 in particular are the ones that stand out.
Yeah, agreed. I really, really like Juan Soto today. If there's one player in this lineup that I like more than anyone else, I mean, 4,500, you just mentioned it. That seems very cheap for a player that is seemingly above 5K almost every day, but his price has been down over the past few days, which I think should be exploited.
Agreed.
And Matt Adams batting 5th at 4K. Yeah, I do like this Washington team. Alex, you mentioned though that they're going to be pretty popular, right?
Yeah. So on today's slate, I'm projecting about 7% of the ownership to fall on the Nats, which is about in line with my top stack percentage. So I think they're definitely playable. One guy that I might pull ownership fade on is Matt Adams on FanDuel, the highest owned player on the team because of that 2,600 price tag. But he's got some power. Like a pretty decent batter, but as far as the team stack, I think you can get a lot of leverage over other people if you leave him off.
All right, that sounds good to me. Let's move it on to the next one. We've got Toronto and LA. Speaking of the stack tool, Alex, over at awesemo.com, we have Awesemo's top stack tool, which shows you probability of being the top stack, projected ownership on that stack, value on the stack. I know you, myself, Adam, we factored into our research every day, along with your player projections, ownership projections. You can get access to all of that by using the promo code Deeper Dive. Get half off your first month when you sign up using that promo code Deeper Dive. All one word, not 2 words. And it's all of the same tools that Alex is using each and every day for his daily process. Adam uses them as well. So use that code. Check us out. Get an Awesemo Plus membership. Say what's up in the Slack chat when you do so, and we'd be happy to show you around. So right now, it's far and away, Alex, the Angels who have the highest top stack probability for very good reason, and the top stack ownership. Also, I think everybody understands why. And amazingly, they also have the top value of any team. So I would love to know, you're the one that created this tool. How do you play this when they're the highest projected or the top probability or the highest probability of having the top stack, the highest ownership, but also the highest value by a wide margin on this slate? What are you doing?
I think what I found in situations like this is that I have a lot of lineups that end up making the cut that have the team that's projected to be like the really popular, really well projected, high value stack, but they generally aren't my top teams. So I think especially as you move up in stakes, the ownership gets even more concentrated on some of these really good value plays like the Angels tonight. I think though that you can make some nice stacks from it, because what we're seeing is the top 4 guys are all projected to have really high ownership, and the rest of the lineup is pretty reasonable. So I think that maybe you can make a pretty contrarian play even with the chalk stack if you, for example, leave off Ohtani or leave off Upton in your stack.
What about you, Adam? How are you playing the Angels here?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. They are in a really good spot, and they are pretty affordably priced. I think that there's a couple of ways you can approach it. I expect that I'll have a lot of Angels here just because it's a really high upside spot. It's a good point per dollar spot. Like you said, it's all of that. For one, I kind of see this as a slate where I spread out my pitching a little bit more and go a little bit concentrated on hitting. Normally I'm the other way around, but there's not a lot of pitching that I have a high confidence level in here, and there's not a ton of stacks that I love. So for one, I think that's one way you can be different, is just, by mixing up your pitching, mixing up your one-offs. But also you can be different within this stack. The 3 guys that I expect to be really popular and I think are really good plays are Trout, Ohtani, and Upton in the outfield. But like Tommy La Stella, he's a good play. He's $4,700 on DraftKings, and for example, Brandon Lau is $4,900. Brandon Lau has more power than La Stella does. It's a much worse matchup for him, but the ownership probably will be a fraction. So, if you make an Angel stack with a different second baseman, like a Brandon Lau over a La Stella, you're contrarian there. If you use guys at the bottom of the order for the Angels, like a Tovar, as a cheap shortstop option, you're still contrarian there. So normally I'll end up with a lot of Angels. It'll just be, some different types of stacks or some different pitching or something like that.
Do you have any interest in Felix Pena as the long man here? I know his pitch count has been all over the place, which is concerning, but he also has one of the highest swinging strike rates on this slate. He does get strikeouts at a pretty high clip, 31% called plus swinging strike rate, and he's very good against righties. How many righties do we have in the lineup today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 righties in this lineup, all of them towards the bottom. What do you make of a guy like Felix Pena?
I would have had more interest if Miles Michaelis was priced appropriately on the two-pitcher site, but he's not. And you also have Eliezer Hernandez. You also have Tommy Malone. You have enough guys, not that I'm saying I love either or any of those three, but you have enough guys that we know if they're pitching well will give you, 90, 100 pitches that there's just kind of too many question marks for me with Pena. For one, you do have, 4 lefties in the top 5 here, which I think is worth pointing out. But also, outside of one game, he's basically throwing 76, 77 pitches. So it's just really tough. It would be different if all those guys were like 8K and you had Pena sitting there at 6,700.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I don't disagree with that at all. It would have been a lot less crazy on a slate where guys like Michaelis and a few other pitchers that we'll get to weren't as cheap and also in favorable spots. Alex, do you have interest in pitching here with Felix Pena or any interest in Toronto hitters?
I think Felix Pena, if you're going to play him, would be DraftKings only. But I think the Toronto hitters for sure are great values on all 3 sites. So I think you can go there. The ownership will be pretty high. This is a team where the value exceeds the potential. So I think that it might draw people to have them in their 150 at a higher rate. And for that reason, they wouldn't be one of my top stacks of the night, but I think that they make a pretty nice high projected play.
Okay. Adam, you want to add anything on this game?
No. I mean, Cavan Biggio is another second base option you can get to. Vlad Guerrero obviously is too cheap for his talent level, but it's mostly Angels for me.
Okay. Yeah, Biggio you don't have an issue with, assuming Pena is going to throw enough innings. Rowdy till his batting cleanup here, and he remains cheap. No smoke, right?
No smoke, but it's still a pretty nice Toronto lineup. I think they kind of have a quiet 5 implied run total. Like, they're probably going to go completely overlooked. And they are a team that if you are looking to pay up for 2 pitchers, you could do so.
Yeah, no, it's a valid point. I was actually surprised to see that it was at 5, but that's where it's at. 6.2 for the Angels, 5 for Toronto. We got an 11 over-under on this game at Rogers Center. So, yeah, it's pretty significant. Let's move on to Cincinnati and Houston. Luis Castillo and Wade Miley. Adam, we'll stick with you. This is one of those games where I just don't have a ton of interest in. Maybe you can sway me on some of it. Like, I'm always into Eugenio Suarez against lefties, batting third, of course. You wouldn't have to pull my arm to get me to consider like Puig or Irving, But Wade Miley hasn't been bad. He's not bad. He's not a great fantasy pitcher, but he's not bad at pitching. And while Luis Castillo has a very difficult matchup, I can't say I'm super interested in any Houston bats, especially now that some of the price points are beginning to rise. I mean, I think Alvarez is always going to be in play, but it's not a game I have a ton of love for.
Yeah, so you mentioned Suarez. I do really like him. He's 4,100 on DraftKings, and I know Miley's been better this year, particularly in limiting damage against him. Not that his strikeout numbers have been good, but Suarez is just really cheap. You're talking about a guy with 403 plate appearances against lefties since 2017, a 251 ISO, a 402 WOBA, hitting in Great American. I don't care what improvements Miley's made. I still really like Suarez at that price point. And then also Luis Castillo, I don't love the spot, obviously, because even though the Astros are missing guys, they're still a pretty good offense. They still don't strike out a lot. But what I am noticing after crunching some lineups is that hitter pricing on DraftKings is so weak today. and you have cheap SP2 options like Michaelis and Malone that we talked about, or at least mentioned, that there's a lot of times where I just have a lineup where I just have money that I don't really know what to do with, and I like all my hitters. So I was getting some Luis Castillo simply because he's a really good pitcher, and I can. So I'll probably have Castillo in some tournament lineups.
All right, fair enough. What about you, Alex? Houston, Cincinnati pitchers.
I think this is definitely not a game with great hitting with the 4.4 team totals on both sides, but I'm not projecting great fantasy points for the pitchers either. Castillo, I mean, a good strikeout pitcher, 29% of the year, but the price tag is top dollar. So this might end up being a bit of a Manny special for me.
Manny special. All right, so we're all on a pretty similar page here. Do you want to add anything else, Adam, before we move on?
Nope, just kind of was scrolling through my initial crunch, and it does look like I'm pretty much Suarez, Castillo, and not much else.
Okay, that sounds good then. We keep moving. Atlanta, New York Mets. Alex, we go back to you here. We've got Mike Soroka, who, well, good. He's not 12K, but this guy is still very expensive. He is the most expensive pitcher on DraftKings. Once again, he is the most expensive pitcher on FanDuel. And Yahoo has got Mike Clevenger at the top. Soroka a bit further down. But look, he's expensive. I think the Mets are a more capable offense than a lot of people give them credit for. And on the other side, love to get your take on Wheeler because he's done a phenomenal job of pitching deep into games. His price point on Yahoo is pretty egregious. I think he's at like $36. Yeah, he's the same price as Miles Michaelis. So I personally think I could make an argument for Wheeler on Yahoo just based on his longevity throughout games. But it's a really tough team or a tough matchup. Atlanta's got a run total north of 5. I can't say I'm in love with anyone here.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Like Wheeler having a really strong season so far for both fantasy and pitching well. I mean, 3.8 xFIP. The ERA is a little bit higher, but overall, I think that pretty good fantasy pitcher. But Atlanta is probably one of the worst matchups in the league. For that reason, I definitely don't think he's worth that price tag of 9.2K on DraftKings and FanDuel. But on Yahoo, where he's 36, that's kind of the low mid-range. So that corresponds more to like 7K on DraftKings and FanDuel. So I think he's a solid value on Yahoo.
All right, yeah, that's where I'm at as well. Do you have any difference of opinion here, Adam?
Nope, completely agree with that. Tough to get to him to get the Wheeler on any site that's not Yahoo. And as far as Soroka, he's just still more expensive than I want to pay for him. I don't think he's a 10K or an almost $50 Yahoo pitcher. He has a 1.9 ERA this year. His PCRA is up around 3.7, which is still good, but it's not, ace level. And he hasn't been a high strikeout guy. He's not supposed to be a high strikeout guy. And so basically you're just paying a price tag that is saying, I need this guy to go 8 innings, strike out 6, and not give up any runs every single time he pitches. And that's just not something I'm looking to do.
Right. I mean, especially when you're getting Patrick Corbin at a $2,300 discount.
Yeah, and not even, just Corbin. You're getting, even if you're not really confident in the guys, you're getting a whole range of mid-range guys that are viable options. Chances are a couple of them do better on a point per dollar basis than Soroka.
Yeah, we'll get to Kenta Maeda shortly. Another guy that, well, we'll talk about him. Do you guys have any interest in hitters here?
Cano is a one-off on DraftKings and Yahoo. On Yahoo, Cano is the minimum price, which is quite the fall from grace for him, but I'm willing to give him more credit than that, especially batting third.
For sure. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I agree with Cano because I think with the Indians having a higher implied run total than the Mets, you're going to see Jason Kipnis be the not very good second baseman in the middle of the lineup that gets all the ownership, and you could just pivot to the not very good second baseman on the Mets instead. So that works. And also, I just wanted to kind of – I said 3.7 PCRA for Soroka. It's 3.56. So points still stay. Just gave the wrong number.
All right. How about we go to Texas? Talk the Rangers, Cleveland Indians. Adam, we've got ourselves Lance Lynn and Mike Clevenger. Clevenger's, I would have loved to have seen more pitches in his two tune-up appearances, because he had 22 strikeouts in 12 innings in the first two starts he made before going down with that back injury. He allowed 2 hits. He looked brilliant. He looked unbelievable, and he only threw 75 pitches in that second one because he got hurt. He had a 21% swinging strike rate, 40% called plus swinging strikes. Granted, 2 starts, not sustainable, but knowing that he has a massive amount of upside was something that we took into this season before it even began, right? So I'd love to know where you stand at 8,700 against the Texas team that's dealing with injuries to. Now I don't believe we have a lineup yet, but Joey Gallo, Hunter Pence, they said the injury looked pretty serious. Nomar Mazara was day-to-day. Willie Calhoun, I don't know what his status is. This could be a massively watered-down Texas lineup today, even though it's in Arlington. Go ahead.
Yeah, my only concern here is how many pitches is he going to throw?
I'm thinking 85.
Right, I'm thinking 80, 85. The Indians don't have any reason to just run him out there to 100 pitches. He threw 58 and then 67 in his 2 rehab starts. He's priced well. So basically what I'll say about Clevenger is I think that if I get him in lineups, or if you get him in lineups, the reasoning should be kind of like I said about Castillo. I have everyone in this lineup that I want. I got the stack I wanted. I got the one-offs that I wanted. If I spend money on anyone else, it's simply just a luxury, and it's not actually making my team any better. And I have the money for Clevenger. I can get him in there. He'll probably score more raw points than, Tommy Malone or something like that. That's how you get the Clevenger today. It's tough to get there in terms of, just pure raw points or point per dollar, because you can't really project him to throw more pitches than Patrick Corbin or to throw more pitches than Kenta Maeda. It is also a tough park to pitch in. Granted, there are strikeouts and he is a good pitcher, but it's a tough park. So that's why I won't have a ton of him, is the concerns over the pitch count. And where I do have him, I expect that I would go back and look at those lineups, and it would be like, okay, yeah, I couldn't have really improved anything anywhere, so it doesn't matter.
All right. Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable across the board. Alex, where do you come in on a guy like Clevenger? And we can also talk Lance Lynn, just because he has been good this season, but not sure how much of that's going to hold up going forward.
Yeah, Clevenger, I'm kind of intrigued because his strikeout numbers this season in those 4 starts, including a couple of rehab starts, have been off the charts. But I think that given the fact that he's probably going to be limited, I'm not nearly as interested as I would be otherwise.
All right. What are your thoughts on the bats in this game? Again, I don't think we have. I don't see a Texas lineup yet, but they're dealing with a lot of injuries right now.
Texas on Yahoo has very favorable prices. Team total 4.7, so I think they're not going to really stand out unless they're priced well. And on FanDuel and DraftKings, they're priced a little bit too high, but especially Delino to Shields at 7. And then the middle of the order looks pretty. They're in the low 10s, so I like them on Yahoo. On DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo for the Indians, I'm seeing Kipnis and Ramirez both kind of being the bargain bin options, and they have really good lineup spots. So I think they're going to be super, super popular. So I think that creates an opportunity where maybe you can make a creative stack around the Indians, because the rest of the team is priced pretty decently, especially on DraftKings. So I think that could be a creative way to approach stacking them.
Adam, are you landing on any bats in this game?
I think, to me, this just screams like a team that you attack heavily in cash games and then can be underweight, at least on the popular parts in tournaments, because Lance Lynn has legitimately been good this year. We haven't seen him really struggle with lefties for a couple of years now, and it's gotten even better this year. He's allowed a 139 ISO, 302 xWOBA, 116 expected ISO. The strikeouts haven't really been there against lefties, so I'm not looking to roster Lynn, but he's done a really, really good job of limiting damage. And then on top of that, you have Jose Ramirez, who has been bad for so long that we're starting to think maybe he's just not very good. Kipnis is kind of in the same boat. You have a questionable bottom of the lineup. Like, the only hitters in this lineup that we know are good are Francisco Lindor and, to a lesser extent, Carlos Santana. So you're going to get a lot of ownership on guys like Kipnis and Ramirez in particular, but that's just going to drive up, Indian stacks in general. So it's a spot where, if you're playing 50-50s, there's no real reason to take a stand where you're not playing a $2,700 Kipnis in Texas. But in tournaments, it's probably a team that goes higher owned than they should.
All right. Yeah, it certainly seems to be that way. What are your ultimate thoughts on Jose Ramirez at this point?
Somewhere in between what he's done over the last 10 months and what he did 2 years ago. I mean, he's young enough where I don't think that there's a reason where he would just suddenly be bad at hitting baseballs. But at the same time, we're kind of getting into territory where it's been going on for a long time now.
Well, let me throw out a stat here. His BABIP on the year is 22.5%. The league average is 29%, and this dude isn't exactly slow. So maybe do you think luck is factoring in if you're taking that into account?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. His last I looked, at least his expected stats this year also were pretty bad. He has against right-handed pitching this season. Where is he? All right, yeah. So he's not showing up for me. So never mind. But last I looked, his expected stats, his expected WOBA and ISO were both still down this year, even taking into account his BABIP.
Yeah, even with the 225 BABIP, like he's been bad. I think going to what you were saying, Adam, he's somewhere in between everything we've seen over the last year. He's not. I don't think we ever see him get back to last year's status, but I don't think he's as bad as he's been either. So the reason I asked that is when you're continuously getting Jose Ramirez at 3,700 or on Yahoo, he's coming in at $11. And on FanDuel, what's Ramirez on FanDuel? He's 3,100. Like, is that enough to say, all right, well, he hasn't been good. He should be a little bit better than this, and he's priced like he's been as bad as he has this season?
Right. I think it doesn't really – it basically leaves you nothing but upside, which makes it so I like him as a DFS play, but people also realize that, and so they're rostering him. And so that's why I think in cash games you should just be playing him because – especially in 50-50s where there's no real reward for being contrarian. And head-to-heads, if you think Suarez is, for example, a better play, then go for it. But I think you should at least be playing him there. And if he were low-owned in tournaments, like if he was getting like the Shohei Ohtani treatment where people were like, oh, this guy was a fluke, he can't hit, I would roster him every day like I did Ohtani. But that hasn't been the case with Ramirez. And so if all the ownership's going to flock there, I'm okay being like, okay, maybe – he does have a huge hole in his swing or something, and I can just get a lower-owned Suarez or Guerrero or whoever at third base because everyone wants to play Ramirez.
For sure. No, I think that's a good way to look at it. All right, we'll move on then. We're through six to go here. Boston, Minnesota. Alex, we've got ourselves a Porcello Berrios matchup here in Minnesota. Berrios, I don't know how many times we've talked about it. I believe you and I did a solo show together or without Adam last week when Berrios was on the mound, and it was I think Garrett Cole, and it's like, yeah, Berrios is a good pitcher, and he's consistent, but his ceiling is just so much lower than any guy that should be priced above 10K. Kind of similarly to Mike Soroka, actually, and it's not a very good matchup. And on the other side, Rick Porcello is. Well, he's Rick Porcello. I'll let you explain where you're at on him.
I'm not really on the pitching in this game. The over-under of 10 kind of speaks to the fact that conditions aren't great, especially considering that these pitchers aren't bad. I mean, if you think Porcello is average, I guess. Jose Berrios has been above average, so good conditions for hitting. The price tags are very high for batters on both teams, so I think this might be a good pay up to be contrarian game.
Okay. What about you, Alex? Or Adam, sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to the bats here too. Berrios I have respect for, but he's kind of taken the Max Fried approach where he's walking less guys but also striking out less guys. And I don't know why pitchers do that or teams encourage it. It's not actually good, but it's certainly not good for DFS. And you're facing a Red Sox team that's difficult to strike out anyway. I don't expect the Red Sox to get a lot of ownership because it is, a tough matchup against Berrios. But you're getting, on DraftKings, Mookie Betts at 4,300. The entire team is sub 5K for probably the first time this year. That wasn't against an ace, I would guess, or like a Chris Sale type ace. Devers is pretty inexpensive, hitting fourth. That's another way you can be contrarian at third base. So I have some interest in Boston. And then on the other side, implied run total. They've been one of the best offenses in baseball this year. I don't have a ton of respect for Rick Porcello. He doesn't miss bats. He still gives up power. An ISO around 200 to both sides of the plate. And I think that the pricing on the Twins is expensive enough where, like Alex said, people are going to, like, if you're using an optimizer, you're getting the Angels, you're getting the Indians, and then you're mixing in some other stuff. You can get to the Twins for a little bit more money. It's not really costing you much in terms of pitching because it doesn't exist on this slate. And you can be contrarian with one of the best offenses.
All right. Who do you like the most here?
From the Red Sox, Betts and Martinez and Devers, and then in that order. From the Twins, Cruz, Rosario, everyone else.
Any bats you like specifically here, Alex?
Betts on DraftKings. That's the only guy that really grades out as a plus value for me.
Okay. I guess we can move on. Like I said, some of these games weren't going to take very long. That's one of them. We'll stick with you, Adam. Miami, St. Louis, Alicia Hernandez, and Miles Michaelis. Look, I get it that Michaelis was tuned up in his last start, which just so happened to come against Miami. But you mentioned this a minute ago. He's very cheap. And whether that's the case or not, like, sure, Miami will have some good games once in a while, but it doesn't take away from the fact that they're the worst team in almost every category when it comes to facing right-handed pitching, and they strike out at the 8th highest clip. So, yeah, from time to time, they'll have some decent games. They're going to play 162 of them. But more times than not, they're not going to have good games. And while Michaelis isn't very good, neither are the Marlins, and he's priced like he's not good. He isn't priced like he's facing the Marlins.
Yeah, Jake and I had a pretty good conversation, I think, about Michaelis on the strategy show this morning. And basically the cliff notes of it was people rely too heavily on median projections in DFS as opposed to range of outcomes. But when you have someone like Michaelis who's priced to like his 25th percentile outcome, even if they aren't a volatile player that has a really wide range of outcomes and has a really high ceiling, just if he hits his median projection, it's really good for his salary, especially when you factor in the hitters you're able to get. And then if he does reach whatever his ceiling is, it still can make him, close to a guy that you have to have. So even though he's not that type of pitcher, when he's at, a bargain basement price tag and he's facing the Marlins, it's pretty tough to get away from him, even though I don't think he's a really good pitcher. It's just, too good of a price for me to pass up.
Okay. Alex, what about you? Alicia Hernandez and Miles Michaelis in St. Louis.
I think these are going to be two of the best and most popular pitchers on the slate. Michaelis, because he's facing Miami, and that always adds a significant amount to fantasy potential. And Hernandez, because he's not priced to the point that his talent level should indicates from his stats in minor leagues this year. Last time, I thought he was super underpriced. He went out and got 7 strikeouts, and that kind of was just one more data point to affirm the fact that he is a great strikeout pitcher. St. Louis is just an average matchup as far as strikeouts, but I think that for his price being one of the lower on the slate, I think that he's a great GPP flyer, and Michaelis is just priced too low for that matchup, so I think that both of them are excellent plays.
All right. Yeah, I'm with both of you guys here. It's just too sensible to try and avoid it. And it's not like the options that are similarly priced or priced, another $1,000 up are that much safer options. And that's kind of how I'm approaching it. If I could get a guy that I thought was a much, much better play and was going to be a lot less lower or a lot less owned, and I had to go up to like 7,500, sure. But, the guys that we're going to talk about in that range aren't exactly, putting in for Cy Young awards. So that's probably worth noting here. What about bats, though, Alex? Because the St. Louis Cardinals do have a pretty high implied run total here. It's right now, what are they at? They're sitting at, why can't I find it? 4.8. They're 211 money line favorites, so that bodes well for Michaelis. Any interest in St. Louis against Hernandez?
Yeah, this is a game where I think you can take the pitcher against the team and you can stack the team up. The team total is pretty decent. It's not like gonna really be one of the top ones on the slate, but there are a couple of good value plays in Carpenter and Goldschmidt. Particularly Goldschmidt on Yahoo, where he is $11. So that is just like kind of ridiculous. And then Carpenter leading off seems to be underpriced every day. His power hasn't been that good this year, so that could be a reason why. But his BABIP indicates that maybe he's been getting a little unlucky. He's about 10% lower than the average. And yes, I think particularly on Yahoo, they're a good play.
All right, what about you, Adam?
Yeah, I think the Cardinals are a team that I'll probably get to mostly as mini stacks. I'm not opposed to full stacking, but there's 24 offenses. But Carpenter and Goldschmidt in particular are both really, really cheap. But then you also get a Paul DeJong at a reasonable price tag. You get Yachty at catcher. Ozuna's a really good hitter. So I think that most likely it's a team where it's they're the 2-man or the 3-man in my 5-2 or 5-3.
Okay.
And I'm also on Hernandez. Like I echo everything Alex said about that.
Right. Yeah, I think we all agree on that one for sure. We'll see if we agree on this one. Baltimore and Oakland, Mike Fiers, Andrew Cashner. I want to take a look at our updated ownership and see where Cashner's coming in at, because it's a really odd slate for pitching, just based on so many very pedestrian arms being in either good spots or decently priced and not having a ton of great alternatives. Like on DraftKings, for example, you've got, of course, these are ownership projections you can find on awesemo.com. Michaelis has jumped up to the highest projected owned pitcher, then Danny Duffy, Corbin, and then, Adam, you have Mike Fiers at 23%. What I find interesting here is he's got a very good matchup, sure. But he's also finished with fewer than 20 DraftKings points in 13 of 15 starts. One of them that he didn't finish with less with 20.5, and the other was that fluky no-hitter. So he's got a 7% swinging strike rate. What do you make of him here at almost 8K?
Fiers to me is like the opposite end of the conversation that we had about Michaelis and range of outcomes and his price tag. Fiers' medium projection is fine for a $7,700 price tag, but there's not a lot of meat left on the bone, and you have to have him have one of those starts. And clearly he can. The Orioles suck, and it's a good park for pitchers. But if he were low owned, I'd be interested. Like in my initial crunch on DraftKings, I got like 13% Fiers. So if he were 5%, I would expect he would be someone that popped into a lot of the lineups that I end up playing. But since I only got him in like half, I got him at 13%. He's projected for 23. I expect he's someone that my sorting process kind of filters out, and that ownership or that exposure goes to a handful of other guys that are lower owned, or goes to cheaper guys like Michaelis. So I don't think I'll be with the field if his ownership stays that high. It's not that he's a bad play. It's just that I think there is more downside than upside.
All right. Well, how do you approach this then, Alex? After hearing this conversation, I'd like to know where you stand on a guy like Mike Fiers, who is not good, but in a good spot and has at least been consistent, but he's not very cheap either. What do you think?
I'd love to come at you guys with a really strong take, but I'm really indifferent about this. Like,
so am I.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup, Baltimore has a pretty bad offense running out tonight, and he's not been a great strikeout pitcher this year, 17% Ks, but Baltimore's lineup strikes out at an exceptional rate. I have them as the team average 27.5%, which is 20% higher than average, which when you add that up to a low strikeout rate, you get a pretty decent one. And I find with pitching, there's just so much variance in getting the outs versus getting the balls. Essentially, whether it's an out or a batter gets on base is so random that creates a ton of variance for every single pitcher, and the variance of every player that in baseball is so high that I don't have any problem like going to a guy who doesn't get quite as many strikeouts. Okay.
So I have Tanaka projected for like a half a point more on DraftKings, and right now we have Tanaka projected at 16% ownership instead of 23%. So I would expect that in most of my builds where I end up in that price range at pitcher, I just favor Tanaka over Fiers as long as that ownership holds.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've covered it. Do we like any batters from this game? Oakland, continuously underpriced. Cashner has been good enough. He hasn't been a complete gas can this year, but last I looked, we were projecting Oakland to have some ownership. Let me see where we're at now. Oakland coming in around 5th highest ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Alex, you've got him coming in a lot lower, around 7th or 8th. And then Yahoo ownership, we've got Oakland much further down. So DraftKings is definitely the friendliest pricing for these A's bats.
Yeah, I think you can definitely make a nice stack, but what I'm seeing is only the first 5 batters in the lineup are really of fantasy value. So I'd be concerned if you're stacking up Oakland, you're going to end up with the same guys as everyone else, and it's not going to be that easy to differentiate because you're going to some overpriced guys at the bottom.
Adam?
Yeah, the park also not great. Cashner has given up power to righties, but he has also been a better pitcher, I think, than people give him credit for. Most of the upside here would be if, against the terrible pitchers behind him, I think is why you have over a 5 implied run total for Oakland. Davis and Chapman are the 2 that I'm getting the most of, but more likely that I just get them as, some one-offs or 2-mans.
Okay. Got a few games to go here. This next one is the Dodgers in San Francisco. Adam, I was actually surprised to see Maeda with lower projected ownership. Well, I was surprised to see his ownership as low as it is on DraftKings here. I understand the whole pitch count issue. Like that obviously plays really heavily into this. But 8,600 on FanDuel, he's projected at 8% ownership. And then at 49 on Yahoo, he's 20%. But that's interesting because he's more expensive there than he is anywhere else. The reason I mention this is look at Rich Hill, look at Walker Buehler, look at Clayton Kershaw, look at Kingery. None of them have had those concerning pitch counts that we've really seen in seasons past, maybe earlier in the year. But these guys, when they're pitching well, they're getting over 100. Buehler, Ryu, Kershaw, and even Rich Hill. So why is it that Kenta Maeda is the one of these 4 guys who has been pulled so early? How much of that has to do with just inopportune pinch hit scenarios where Dave Roberts pulls him? Like, is it as big of a concern as we're making it out to be when he's one of 5 starters dealing with it?
I think it's tough to say because, it could be the pinch hit issue, but you also have to keep in mind that this is a guy that in previous years, every opportunity they've gotten, they've turned him into like a 3-man bullpen guy.
Sure.
Like, especially down the stretch. So I really don't know, but I think that there is at least maybe some reason to think that they could just continue to be more cautious with him than with other pitchers. That said, though, he did throw 97 pitches in his last start. He only went 4 1/3, but he threw 97 pitches.
Right.
I think he's a good enough play. The issue that I have more so, or I guess equally to the pitch count, is that San Francisco probably is going to have 5 lefties in their lineup. And, if you go back to last season, his strikeout percentage against lefties is about 10 percentage points lower than against righties. He's someone that dominates righties and is, pretty average against lefties. Not that I think he gives up a lot of runs, but, maybe not quite as much strikeout upside as normal. So we have him projected for 17% ownership on DraftKings. My initial crunch, I got him at 19% as my 5th highest owned pitcher. I think I'll probably end up right around there.
What percent? 19, you said?
Yeah, 19.
I like that. I just do think that Maeda, even despite some of the concerns, he does have a high ceiling. And at 9K or 8,600, I'm willing to take that bait. What about you, Alex? Where do you stand on Maeda here?
Kind of indifferent. I think that as you guys mentioned, the strikeouts aren't easy to come by with the Giants, but they are pretty bad offense. So pretty good potential, but I like some of the lower price guys better.
Okay. What about bats, Adam or Alex? Do you have any interest in hitters here going up against the old Tyler Beede?
Yeah, I'm going to eliminate San Francisco. The team total 3.8 is too low. So against Beede, the Dodgers, I think they're in a pretty good spot. On FanDuel, they're particularly well priced, especially Jock Peterson and Verdugo leading it off. Just way underpriced. And on DraftKings, they're fairly priced, so I think you can definitely go there. The ownership doesn't look amazing, but a solid play.
Adam, do you have interest in hitters for the Dodgers here?
Dodgers came in my initial crunch as my highest owned stack on DraftKings, just ahead of the Angels and the Nats.
Is that after sorting?
No, before sorting.
Okay.
So yeah, not factoring in ownership or anything, just running my exposure caps and projections. I think they're just really affordable today. Peterson's a really good play. He's underpriced. Verdugo is fine and he's cheap. Matt Beaty's not really where you would love to go, but he is batting third for a team with a 5+ implied run total at a really cheap price tag. Then you get one of the best hitters in baseball in Bellinger. You get monster power in Muncy, and then you get nothing but value from Chris Taylor down. So, and on DraftKings, they all have multi-position eligibility, or almost all. Literally 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 hitters have multi-position eligibility. On FanDuel, you can roster multiple guys from the same position. On Yahoo, it's a bit tougher. But all that makes it pretty easy to stack them. And Tyler Beede has pretty good stuff, but he hasn't shown the ability to consistently command it and put it all together. And now he's just facing a really, really good offense.
All right. I'm with you on the Dodger bats here. I mean, as far as affordability goes, it's not like you're talking about on DraftKings you had the highest ownership or highest exposure.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're not going to get away from the Bellinger being 57 or Muncy at 5K, but Jock's pretty nicely priced. You're right. The lineup as a whole makes it easier to stack them.
Yeah, and the fact that pitching is mispriced and there are a bunch of mispriced one-offs. You can do whatever you want price-wise today.
Right. No, I agree with that. Anything else to add on this one, Alex?
No.
Not sure if you muted yourself mid-conversation. It's very possible.
Oh, sorry. No, I don't have anything on this game.
All right.
I heard him say no. So.
Oh, you heard no?
Yeah.
Oh, I heard I didn't hear the no. Okay. I heard and then just silence. That's a unique way of doing things. Try that. San Diego and Milwaukee. Alex, we'll stay with you. Joey Lucchese, tough matchup here against a bunch of good righties and lefties who can hit lefties. And Ulyss Chassin. Let me start with Chassin. Is he in play here as just a lower priced tournament guy? Just in the sense of he strikes righties out at north of 22%. He isn't a whole lot worse than so many other guys that we're probably considering. Are you going to have any exposure to a guy like Chassin?
Possibly. I mean, he's a guy that I wouldn't hate to have. The matchup, it's a really good park. The matchup isn't tough. But the price tags in this game for both pitching and batting are a little bit higher than I would like. So I don't see myself getting into any of this game.
Adam?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Chassin, it's nice because he's getting a bunch of righties. But at the same time, he's more expensive than Michaelis. He's the same price as Tommy Malone. He's $1,000 more than Eliezer Hernandez. We don't know exactly how many pitches he's going to throw because he hasn't pitched in 2 weeks. So I'm not really getting there. And then Lucchese, I had said on the show this morning that I thought I might get a pretty good amount just because I thought he would go overlooked being priced in between Corbin and Maeda. And I still think that's the case. But after having crunched some lineups and realizing how easy it is to make lineups and still be contrarian, I'm not getting a lot of Lucchese either in a tough spot against Milwaukee.
What about hitters? I don't have a lot of hitter interest here, even though I don't have a lot of pitching interest.
Neither do I.
Alex?
Same.
All right. I heard a clear same there. All right. Seattle and Kansas City last game. We got about a minute to go. As we said, we'd run through some of them pretty quickly. Tommy Malone's been pretty decent, Adam, but if you look at some of the numbers, I'm not buying into the hype. I think he's fine, but I'm not getting to him today. And Danny Duffy, obviously going to be very popular against the Seattle team that just got rid of Edwin Encarnacion. Mitch Haniger, another dude that took a shot to the nuts, has yet to return. And they have no more Jay Bruce. And what's interesting about him is they did this yesterday too. They're forced to run out another 5 lefties against a lefty.
Yeah, so I guess starting with Duffy, he earlier today was the highest projected pitcher on DraftKings, and normally I'm like as high on Duffy as anyone. So I was like, I don't understand this. Now he's second highest, but he's still up there. But then you look at this lineup, and there's good reason for it. You have 5 lefties out there, like you just said. You have Tom Murphy and Mac Williamson, who both will, they have some power, but they're not great hitters. Duffy has, not surprisingly, been much better against lefties than righties. I really like Duffy here after seeing this lineup. And then on the other side, I don't really want to buy into Tommy Malone because we have a very long track record of him being completely mediocre. And if you look at his velocity and pitch movement and stuff, you're not getting a really different pitcher this year. But at the same time, he's faced a really tough stretch of schedule so far. His release point looks like it could be a little bit different than previous years. But the thing that really stands out is that he's faced like the Angels, the Astros, the Twins. He's had some tough matchups. He's still struck out 25% of hitters. He's allowed 11% of balls in play to be barreled, which is a really high percentage. But it's not like he's priced up. Kansas City does have some strikeouts in their lineup. He's not a guy that I'm like locking in or anything like that. But I'm getting enough of I'm getting more of him than Chacin for comparison.
All right. My thing, Alex, is some of these Kansas City bats, specifically on DraftKings, have seen their prices plummet. It's not a good park, though, and Malone has been decent. So where do you come in on all of this between the Mariners and Royals?
I think the Royals really jump out as great values on the bat side. And for that reason, I think they're going to be a little bit too popular tonight based on our ownership. And then with the pitching, I like both guys, but I think they're coming in second to me. It's the guys in the Miami-St. Louis game.
Okay. Do you guys have anything to close out on this game here?
No.
Adam? Yeah. All right. Top Stacks, live before live, coming up next. By the way, if you enjoy the show, you want to see more, you want to help support us, give us a thumbs up, like the video. It helps us a lot, and we really appreciate it. Subscribe and hit that notification bell as well, so you always know when content's dropping next. Top Stacks, Adam, go.
Dodgers, Angels, Twins.
Alex.
Man, this is a tough one. Minnesota is a contrarian stack.
All right, I'll go with the contrarian one too, since Adam gave the good ones. Well, Washington I really like, not as contrarian. And Corbin's going to have some popularity. Philly's top of the order is kind of nice. That'll do it for us. Stick around. Live before lock coming up next. Good luck tonight.